podcast, and we're joined by a very special guest today. This is Dr. Rand Paul. He's a U.S. Senator from Kentucky, and as a lot of these listeners already know, he just introduced groundbreaking legislation yesterday to redirect federal education dollars directly to families so that we can fund families and students directly instead of school systems. So thank you so much for joining us today, Senator.
Well, thank you. I've always been a fan of school choice. I've traveled around the country and seen some examples of where when people are given a choice, kids, no matter the color of their skin, their background, can really thrive and do well from all of our communities. And it's just sad that they don't have this opportunity. I visited Boys Latin School, a charter school in Philadelphia, Josephinum in Chicago, which was a girls' school, but allows a lot of girls of different racial backgrounds, but also mostly in poverty, to come. And the results are amazing. So what we've introduced now is a bill. There is money that comes from the Federal Department of Education called Title I funds, and it goes to school districts based on how many kids meet some poverty level requirements. And what we've said is, look, we're not big fans of the Department of Education. We're not big fans of federal money. However, if the money's going, why don't we try to do something good with it? So instead of just directing it to the school district, we would like to say that it goes to the individual child and their parents, and then they get to spend it like a voucher. And they would take the money. They could go to another public school if they found a better public school, not in their district. They could go to a private school, religious school, home school, you name it. And it would help to have some choice. And I think through that competition, it would make the education a lot better for these kids.
So this is essentially an education savings account program, and it seems to be like it's a step in the right direction to fund the students directly and using the existing federal education dollars. Could you go over some of the things that these education dollars could be used for? I've seen some people on social media and elsewhere pointing out that, oh, well, what if families aren't spending the money wisely? What if they're spending it on X, Y, or Z? Is there any safeguard in place for the dollars?
The way the details would work is you'd have to have receipts for things. You can't just say, oh, I spent it somewhere. You actually spend it out of school, or if you're homeschooled, it would have to be, for our curriculum or for a computer. There would have to be receipts that would be probably produced only if you were audited, kind of the way, because a tax system would work, that you do selective audits of things. But yeah, you have to be careful that it's spent in the right fashion. And we do have government programs that aren't, that people sort of pretend like they're going to college, take the money, and then just spend it, on other things. So I think we do have to be careful with the money. But I think the bottom line is that competition works in the marketplace. Competition breeds excellence. And also, without question, we're failing a lot of our community. And right now, our country is going through the throes of seeing violence in our cities. Well, one of the root causes ultimately of violence is this idea of feeling that you're dispossessed and have no future, feeling that you are don't have any kind of possibility for success in life, this despair. And I think one way you get rid of despair is by, what's the ticket to success in our country? It's education. And I really think a lot of the things that people are talking about now, racism and this and that, so many of these obstacles are not as big if you have education. I think with education, we're actually a much more tolerant, less bigoted, less prejudiced society than we've ever been. But the key is, if people still aren't educated, they're going to say, well, I didn't succeed because of racism, when in reality, I think education overcomes a lot of those supposed hurdles that people have.
Yeah, and I see this seems like a win-win for everybody, that you're funding the individual students instead of the system. And we have other programs like that people on the left typically support, like Pell Grants and the GI Bill and pre-K programs. The money goes to the people, and you can pick what provider of the service you take those dollars to. So I think this would be a step in the right direction. Do you foresee any? On the other hand, do you foresee any groups coming out against this? It seems to be a no-brainer for me, but
the teachers union, perhaps. The biggest opposition to school choice has always been the teachers union. And what we need to way is to see the parents are with us, and the parents of poor kids are with us, particularly the parents of poor kids who have gotten into like a lottery system in Florida or different states. I mean, we now have thousands of people who participated in the Florida voucher system, and their kids have been educated and then gone on to college and are succeeding. And now there actually is a growing movement. Many of these are African-American families who are saying, well, who's for these vouchers and who's against them? And that's what we end up having to probably get people informed in a The only other way to maybe break the teachers' opposition to this would be to work into one of these bills something that rewards teachers for excellence as well. And I think you could maybe divide teachers in the sense that let's don't go, unions typically want just the median wage to go up. They don't want there to sort of be a differentiation. But I'm a big believer with the internet and with online sort of learning that you could have a teacher that is so good that they don't have 30, why would we limit them to 30 pupils? Maybe they teach 30 million, by having a broadcast every morning by the best teacher in the world. And these teachers do exist. You'd have like the NFL teachers, but they might make a couple $100,000 a year or even more. If they become the best teacher in the country and they're teaching everyone in the country, you'd still have local teachers, but maybe offer teachers the idea that if we did a sort of an exceptional teacher program, that there'd be more money, and then link that to a choice program, maybe we can break up their opposition. I think it still won't work for the union because I think the union doesn't care so much about excellence, they care about the median wage.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I do agree with you that this should lead to more equity in society by allowing less advantaged families to have choice as well, since advantaged families, let's face it, already do have forms of school choice. And I do want to add as well that I think teachers benefit from school choice too, because it incentivizes the public school system to spend the money wisely on the classroom for the teachers, even who remain in the public school system.
Well, and once there's competition, if you start losing students to a private school, guess what? You're going to have to make your public school better. And right now, we also have the additional thing that a lot of the public schools are saying they're not going to teach our kids this year. They still all want to collect a check from us, for the teacher's salary, but the teachers don't want to actually teach the courses. And so I think if that happens, some people may say, I don't want my child to lose a whole year of education. I'm going to go to private schools. So that's why you're seeing, like in Maryland, you've got them trying to ban private schools also because they don't want to see the competition. But I think, my wife yesterday tweeted out, I think your article you'd written on this, and in it she said, and I think we retweeted her, was that basically we want everybody to have the same kind of choices President Obama had for his kids. Now he's worth about $50 million, $100 million. Now he's got a lot of money, so his kids get more choices. But really, we want the average, ordinary to poor kids in our country to have the same kind of choices to choose an excellent school. And really, when it happens, and this is the thing the Democrats should have to admit, every kid out there can learn. They're exceptional kids in every sort of racial group, every socioeconomic group. They're out there, but they're being let down by Democrats because the schools have been, we prevent this idea of choice. We don't let these kids go find that excellent education that will get them out of poverty.
Yeah, and there's huge inequities inherent in the public school system as well when you're residentially assigned to a particular school based on where you live. So yeah, I definitely agree with these arguments, and hopefully we see families have more choices in the future as a result of your legislation. And look, yeah, I mean, with the school reopening debate, this is more important now than ever that, if a Walmart doesn't reopen, you can take your money elsewhere. If a school doesn't reopen, you should be able to take your education dollars elsewhere. I think your bill advances that idea. So I want to thank you for that. And just to remind everybody, this is the School Act introduced by Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Are there any last words you have for us?
Just our goal was to get it as an amendment on this. There's going to be a virus bailout money bill that'll pass again in the next week or so. And the idea was that kids are pretty much lacking in any choice now. Even the public school isn't a choice because they're not going to be open. That we'd put it on there as a school choice amendment to the bailout bill. If you watch Washington, though, very rarely do they let us have amendments. So there's a good chance that they'll stifle the debate before it even occurs. But if it does, we're going to keep this as a freestanding bill also. And I think ultimately the answer to school choice, I mean, conservatives, libertarians have been for school choice forever. We haven't been able to break through the wall, the solid wall that is the teachers union. So the answer ultimately is we have to either get the teachers union teachers to hear the possibility that their schools could get better and actually get improvement through competition, and that there would be more invested in them if we could get that message across. But then the other way to maybe try to win this battle is through like the PTAs. If we could get the Parent Teacher Association and get the parents on our side, that would be a possibility. Unfortunately, the teachers union has influence even in the PTAs, but it would be nice if we could somehow get parents involved, and particularly the parents in the areas of, I've visited the south side of Chicago, and it is just so sad to see what goes on with the violence there. But part of the answer is figuring out how to get a better education, but then also getting expectations. People have to have the expectations. And this is why it's a real danger to society right now, blaming everything on racism, because when we do that, why get an education if everybody hates you? If you're not going to succeed and nobody's going to hire you, why do any of this? When in reality, there is an answer to this, and you can succeed in our country with education. It's happening all across. And really what we need are, podcasts of people who came from minority communities of all different minorities and showing how successful they are now, the ones who have gotten a college degree, to be examples for the next, instead of saying to everybody, oh, why bother? Just why bother, because there's no hope. But I think in reality, there's a great deal of hope. And I think there are not just thousands, tens of thousands of examples of people rising up who are people of color, who are doing great in our society. We need to really focus on that, so it isn't so much doom and despair that there is no hope. And school choice is definitely a part of what I would call hopeful optimism for the future for all of us.
And thank you so much for joining us on the Educational Freedom Institute podcast. We're super happy that you came and explained the bill to us today, and your support for school choice.
Thank you.